Alright, I'm sure we've all seen the discussion about power creep coming back up again over the past few days. This mostly stemmed from Mr. Pokey's tweet calling out power creep as being a problem that players can mitigate. I don't think that premise is wrong. Players absolutely do have the ability to choose who they invest in and be smart about their choices instead of always chasing the new hot thing. That said, I do think the tweet comes across as very misguided when you look at the larger picture and state of the game, because power creep affects the entire player base and not just a select group of people for reasons that I'll explain in this video. To break down my thoughts on this, I think I need to start with a blanket statement. So here we go. I think that people look at power creep and HSR through an extremely present-focused lens. And what I mean by that is while characters can clear content right now regardless of when they were released, that won't always be the case. Like, it's possible for Seela to go in the second half of MSC 12 right now and still kill the swarm within 5 cycles. But she's not going to be doing that for long if the current trajectory of the game continues to be the norm, or at least she won't be able to without continuous and extensive investments into her teammates. When you have to keep investing in a character's team to essentially drag the unit across the finish line, the character's taken the back seat, and furthermore, that's not going to last forever. Let's take the Seela example. Imagine you're someone that loves Seela and you want to keep clearing content with her as long as you can. Are you going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling more on all of her supports and their Eidolons and their light cones and whatever else to the point where it's not even Seela carrying the team, but your E6 Robin? Like, no. And realistically, by that point, 99% of the player base is going to just move on to a character that's newer as the game progresses. I'm sorry, but it is such a bad faith argument to just say invest more, because investing more has a definitive and finite end. There will be a point that no matter how much you invest, it's just not enough. And to be clear, the people crazy enough to go that far are already within the top 1% of players and really just can't be considered normal or relatable anymore. It's not feasible for the average player to just invest over and over again into one specific unit and team forever. To use Pokey's own example from his recent stream and I guess eventual video, he said that a player with the worst luck imaginable will still have at least 8 characters guaranteed if they were playing from day one. So theoretically, you have enough characters guaranteed to play 2 separate teams and clear all the content with them. But what happens when one of your DPS of choice is Seela, like I've been talking about? If we take a basic team of Fujuan, Sparkle, Seela, and Robin, all ID 0 S0, that Seela is not going to be clearing that Swarm boss without a hyper extreme level of investment into her teammates and a hell of a lot of luck into getting something like an S5 DDD for one of your Harmony units, which is basically another 5-star in its own right. This means that you won't have 4 5-star units for your team because you need to spend those guarantees on her supports instead for her to actually clear, for example getting an E1 Robin, therefore meaning you need to either drop Fujuan or Sparkle for something less impactful. And sure, you can say, make better decisions, don't use Seela as your DPS, but again, this goes back to what I said about this discussion always being looked at through a present-focused lens. Like when I got Jingliu back in 1.4, she was being lauded as the top DPS, and people were saying that if anything released that was stronger than her within the next year, the game was cooked. Lo and behold, less than 6 months later, Acheron released. Was I supposed to know or expect that to happen? Was I supposed to go look at the non-existent leaks about Acheron all the way back in 1.4 that said, hey, she's gonna be 2 times as strong as Jingliu is, and wait for her? What about when Acheron actually released and someone got her? Are they supposed to know that in 2 patches Firefly would release as a super break DPS and deal just as much damage as Acheron does with less investment? What about when Fei Zhao released after that? It's 100% pure hindsight to say it's your fault you rolled Jingliu or whoever else because there's better stuff now, and it's disingenuous to say you should have planned your rolls better if someone is now running out of Jades. It's not stupidity to roll for the best DPS at the time, and you can't say it's greedy to roll for another DPS alongside them if you also got the strong supports for them like Ranmei or Robin. Like, the game isn't a stock market. You can't just hold on to your precious Jades hoping for a return on investment someday. They have to be spent to clear the content, and the only thing that players have to go on when new characters release is what they currently know at the time of the release. Even with leaks, we don't know how strong future characters will be other than the fact that they're probably going to be stronger than whatever we have now. We're playing a video game. Like, we should be able to pick a few favorite characters and then play them as much as we want because we spent the exact same amount of rolls on character A as we did on character B. Even the unluckiest player alive from that example earlier that only has 8 unique limited 5-stars will probably not have spent half of those pities on exactly 1 DPS and exactly 3 supports for that DPS. And honestly, it feels completely ridiculous to suggest that a player does that anyway, because not only would that require extremely specific planning, but you'd also have to somehow know the future characters releasing potentially years down the line just to make your unit stronger. It's just not realistic to expect a player to do that. Another one of the things that Pokey said in his discussion is that people basically give up and move on to another character instead of continuing to invest in a team for them. I do have to say I think that's partially true, and to be completely honest, I'm someone who's done that. At least for me though, there's a reason behind my decision. I spent so long chasing after the best supports and teams for my Jingliu. I built Hela, Tingyun, and Bronya back when we didn't have anything better. I got Run Mei because she worked so well with her. I got Sparkle to try using them together, and then I got Robin because she helped her too. But when the 7th best support for her was released with Sunday, why wouldn't I give up when the 8th and 9th support will probably replace him? Why would I keep investing in those extra support units, some of which I don't even care about, just to prop up one of my favorite characters? It's completely asinine to expect me to do that. So you know what? Yeah, I did give up. But again, who wouldn't when the alternative is not getting anyone else in the game that they actually care about? Like, we're playing a gacha game. These games are built on the idea of you collecting and using characters that you personally like, whether that's a waifu, a husbando, or whatever else. And I want to note how I specifically said characters plural, because the games are designed in a way that encourages you to like more than one character. Think about it, there's tons of people that consider Firefly to be their anime wife, and it's because she was shilled specifically by Hoyo to get more people to roll and spend their currency on her. It's impossible to expect every player that got her to hyper-invest in her team specifically because there's going to be plenty more characters that will get the same treatment in the future from Hoyo. You can call that giving up on Firefly, but I call that normal, because again, we're playing a gacha where the whole point is to collect the characters you like. And as I said earlier, the people crazy enough to hyper-invest in one character are such a small percentage of the player base that I just can't consider that a normal way to play the game. It's not my fault that I ended up liking 3 DPS, and if I didn't want to spend money, which to be clear I'm not against, I would basically need to sacrifice a potential support to get that 3rd DPS. Like, you can't plan your favorites, and it's not greedy to want your favorites, so I just genuinely don't understand why this is even an argument. You can't say just get the supports and spend all your rolls on one character, because that's not how or why people are playing these games. So many people play these games just to get their favorites and to use those favorites to clear content, and it feels absolutely awful when their favorites get shoved into a trash can because they don't always spend their jades to chase after that 7th and 8th and 9th support just so they can potentially stay relevant for just a little bit longer. This kind of discussion makes me so heated because making it seem like it's the player's fault for liking different characters feels completely ignorant to the type of game we're playing. Like, if you want to make this argument against the people rolling only DPS and no supports while expecting to clear content, then sure, I'll support that. But this issue affects pretty much everyone, including those who get a mix of both supports and DPS. It's a problem created by Hoyo, and as people have been saying for years now, they are selling us the solution. Getting an E1 Robin to fix your Seela instead of Seela being strong in her own right through some kind of buff is a situation fabricated by Hoyo that only hurts the players. Like, we shouldn't even be having a conversation about which character is the strongest or what supports you need to make them the strongest. We should instead be asking, why the hell are we dealing with this in the first place? Anyway, that's my rant, and a real one this time. I just felt I had to discuss this sooner rather than later and just get my thoughts out there. As always, thank you very much for watching, and if you haven't already, maybe give my other videos a shot too.